Okay, we'll move right into study session. And the first item is to authorize the payment of Quikrete Wichita invoice for aeration top dressing. I thought we just did that
Oh, we did
to
do
another
that.
company. They didn't like the job, so they invited
No,
a
we
second
didn't.
one in.
No,
There's all holes in the
Quikrete-
green and no
they provide the sand
the
to
sand.
fill the holes
Oh, yeah.
on the greens. So
A lot of
there's the top
sand.
dressing. It's a lot of sand.
40.
$1,447.47.
Okay,
Okay,
Yeah.
bring it next week.
All right.
Okay, Public Works.
We have change order 11 for Plaza East Place. While laying out the east driveway for Applebee's restaurant, east driveway and the sidewalk, we discovered a tree and a bollard that had to be removed that was not shown on the plans. We received a proposal from Votes Park in the amount of $535 to complete the work.
okay.
On the Hard Up Elizabeth project, after removing the existing street from Hancock to Elizabeth, we found some soft spots that were encountered in the subgrade. These areas were over excavated and replaced with crushed concrete. Due to the poor condition of the street, we may encounter other areas as the work progresses. Contractor submitted a price of $15 per ton for the equipment, material, and labor to complete this work. We put together a change order for 400 tons to use as needed on the rest of the project.
Are we not, we don't have crushed concrete to put that in?
We do.
Yeah, we do have the material.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, I
There-
guess you said material too, that's why I was asking.
Well, they're providing it. We've
There
run
are
it-
some other materials to go with it,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So you bring it?
Next is the Northview sidewalk, 10-foot sidewalk from Metal Arc Trail to Main Street. I received a call from the designer, Michael Heegert, Alfred Benish, regarding the routing of the new 10-foot sidewalk. There are issues on the north and both the north and south side. There are fewer problems on the south side. We've already received calls from residents on both sides in opposition to putting it on their side. We
You
typically,
put it right down the middle.
we have one right down the middle, it's called Northview. We typically don't have a public meeting until the preliminary design is complete. Just reaching out to see if we want to have one in advance of that or stay with what we typically do.
I don't know, my feeling is we should stay with what we typically do unless you want to have an extra meeting. Because when you do the preliminary design, you may have differences from when you had just the first meeting.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would suggest to do the preliminary design, and at that point, we'll take a look at it and
We'll have a public
have a
meeting
public
then.
meeting at that point.
Okay. And then the last item, we've had a request by Sedgwick. Joe Turner's the Director of Public Works, to rent a dump truck from us 2 to 3 weeks per year. They'd rather not pay more than $500 a week, so, which is well under what our typical like FEMA rates or Blue Book by DataQuest rates would be. So just wanted to throw that out there. Is this something we want to help them out with? Gary feels he can give up the truck for 2 to 3 weeks during the year if we want to move forward with
What
it.
will they use it for?
Mostly hauling asphalt, they said. They just apparently don't have any trucks.
And are we, do we have a truck that we haul asphalt in that
Yeah,
we're
we
gonna
would-
have to
we
clean
would give
that up
them-
all the time?
We would rent, if you guys want to do this, we would rent one of the older trucks that we have.
And all the liability and everything is on them. How does
Sure.
that work?
Well, you're gonna have to have an agreement as far as liability on the property damage side of it. If they run over 30 school kids, it's on them, but on the property damage, we'd have to have an agreement.
What is the equipment charge for that?
Yeah, what's the going
piece?
rate on
What's
that?
the-
Any
What's
idea?
our rate? We have a rate for all different equipment.
Yeah, I think it's around $30 an hour if you could do it by the hour. I don't know what the weekly rate is, but typically it's lower than the hourly rate if it's for a week. I can look into that. We just don't have the Blue Book by Data Quest to.
So you don't know how
research that.
far away we are on the $500? I mean, is that?
It's
is
quite
that-
a ways away.
I mean,
Yeah,
we'd be,
I think we need to look at what our costs are and that we have out there and see if we can't negotiate something more than $500.
And there's a cost to have the city attorney work
Yeah.
up an agreement too.
I would say so.
Yeah, he's $500 an hour just to get the agreement.
Sold.
So,
That's a motion.
that's,
Oh,
that is
There'll be
not
no
a
second.
motion. He must have been asleep and I woke him up mentioning his name.
Okay, so do we want to look at our actual equipment cost? We can do that on our existing trucks, pull a couple of them and look at that, or we can look at the rental rate, which is a construction industry kind of standard.
that's what I'd suggest, to look at the standard
Okay,
and figure that out, and then also work with the attorney to get an agreement written up.
Yeah, but maybe if we're given an older truck, it's not gonna be exactly
Yeah.
that, take that in consideration.
We want to be fair with them, but in the same token, we need to make sure that we stay on top of it.
yeah, typically the prices are given for the age ranges of the.
Exactly. Okay.
So
Is
bring
that
it
the
back
city of
to,
Sedgwick?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
bring it back to study session then?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Administration. Revenue and expenditure budget to actual. Want to bring back Janetta again. It's the only time we get to see her not being a masked rider.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
As we closed out April, I'm here to present and review the April 2020 Revenue and Expenditures Budget to Actual Report. So the first page that you have should be the revenues. And I just want to point out that we're at 33% of the year through April. And you can see that our two biggest revenue sources in the general fund, which is the first page, are our ad valorem taxes, and we've collected, as you can see on the far right, 57% of those budgeted revenues. Our second biggest revenue in the general fund is our sales tax, and if you look down through the page, you can see that our retail sales tax collected is at 34%, so we're 1% over that benchmark of 33% of the year. So that's good news as we look at April revenues. I do want to
I want to interrupt you to be sure that everybody knows, this is before the stay-at-home and everything else, because April sales tax is February, and there's a 60-day lag before we get anything. So that's why we've been talking about the end of May, because that will tell us really what March looked like.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out. So as you indicated, we're anxiously awaiting to see what those numbers come in for sales tax at the end of the May, because those will be March taxpayer collections. I do point out that the total revenues in the general fund collected year-to-date were $3,894,443,082. Comparing that to 2019, we were at $4,013,701. So it's a 3% loss as we look at April year-to-date 2020 compared to 2019. And I would attribute most of that to the smaller percentage of our receipts. As we indicate and as everyone knows, we close the doors. So the smaller revenues have had an impact, and so I would say that the majority of that loss compared to 2019 were in those areas such as closing down the community building, closing down the cabins, not being open for licenses and fees and those sorts of things. So I'm not too worried with April numbers, but just did want to point out that that was a 3% loss compared to 2019 year-to-date. If there's not any questions, we'll just move on to the second page. And the second page are still revenues collected through April, but these are for our outside of the general funds. And you can see those departments highlighted in blue are those departments that have collected less than that 33%. So you can see that the special park and special alcohol, those are funds that are strictly revenue generated from the alcohol tax, which I anticipate that those funds will be a lot less revenue than what we budgeted in 2020. So we'll keep track of those and monitor the expenses going out of those funds. The other fund, as we talk about the impact of COVID, will be the CVB, the Tourism and Convention Fund. The revenue that funds that particular fund is all transient guest tax, and as we know, hotels have had a major impact, and some have even closed temporarily due to the COVID outbreak. But other than that, I don't see any other alarming funds at this point in time as it relates to revenue. If there's not any questions on those additional funds, we'll switch over to the third page. This is the expenditure side of the house as it relates to the budget to actual. And you can see the first section is the general fund. It lists all those departments within the general fund. The only department that has exceeded that 33% is the street department, and that's the $500,000 transfer that we make at the first of the year. And that's why it shows at 100%, because that is, once again, the budgeted transfer over to the Consolidated Streets and Highway Fund that relies not only on the general fund transfer, but also relies on sales tax, gas tax, and some other state funding for its operations. The expenses to date out of the general fund is $3,273,435.44. In comparison to 2019 year-to-date, we were at $3,206,857. So it's up 2% in comparison to 2019. If you take into account the increase in expenditures and the loss in revenue, that total amount as far as comparison to 2019 is around $119,000. There's not any questions on any of those departments. They're all well below the 33% year-to-date. We look at the same funds that we looked at on the revenue side. Here's the expenditure side. There's only one fund that exceeded that 33%, that's the bond and interest fund. And just for those that don't know, we make our interest payments in February, and then also make the principal and interest payments of the 1st of September. So that explains why it is outside of that 33%. Any
Yeah, and the only
questions?
thing that means is we don't go 1/12, 1/12, 1/12.
Right.
It depends on the way things fall.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions for Janelle?
I have a
No,
question.
it's good.
So we received another transient gas tax check. It was for January, February, and March, and it's not included on here. So we would have, it was for $100 and some thousand, 133.
It was received in April?
You sent me the thing saying, so I just wondered why it's not showing up on here. So we received over $200,000 of transient gas tax.
I'll look at that.
Yeah, you sent me a statement saying this is what we received from.
That was received on May 4th, so. The latest one that we got,
Mhm.
it was received in May.
Oh, okay,
That's why it's not on here.
okay.
Yeah.
It's for the first quarter, but they were
Okay, so I just
delayed.
assumed it should be.
Yeah, well, no, they were delayed.
Okay,
So they send out, the state sends out notification of transient guest tax and sales tax, and it didn't hit our account till the 4th. So I can't record receipts
Okay.
until it actually hits the
all right.
account.
Should have been in there, but it was delayed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
that
just
matter,
delayed a few
what it
days.
is.
Yeah, and that may happen. I know there was some talk on June's ad valorem tax, being delayed, so
Okay.
hopefully it won't, but there was some discussion on delaying that, so.
There is no discussion on delaying it. It is not constitutionally possible to delay the ad valorem tax. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be delinquencies, but the state did not take any action
Okay.
because the Constitution does not allow them to take an action.
Good, good.
Okay.
Last item in administration I've got for you. Back in August of 2015, the state of Kansas adopted official social media policy that applies to all state agencies and employees in the executive branch. The policy states that all social media records in Kansas must comply with public records retention requirements outlined by the Kansas Open Records Act. The policy serves as a model for all public agencies managing social media records in Kansas. The city of McPherson has an obligation to comply with those open records laws and must be prepared to respond to public records requests as submitted. This includes social media communication, tracking social media posts, and comments. Comments can be challenged and time-consuming. Back in last year, in 2019, the city of McPherson chose Archive Social to automatically archive and track government agency social media accounts. The city of McPherson chose Social Archive out of three of the leading social media archiving companies, which included Social Archive, Page Freezer, and Smarsh. In 2019, the cost was divided three ways by the following splits: 50% to law enforcement, 25% to CVB, and 25% to fire department. The annual amount is the same as it was back in 2019, and the standard package for core archiving platform features is equivalent to $299 per month, along with the risk analysis management add-on of $199 per month for a total of $7,100. I don't think that's right. $7,176 per year, and this amount can be paid basically $598 from month to month. I might have transposed some numbers there. Might be right. It seems high. No, that should be
No,
right.
it's
That's
right.
That's right. So the question is, obviously, we need to continue doing the social archiving. Is this still the split that you want to do as far as that cost? And if not, if there's anything else you'd like to do differently, let me know, but otherwise I'd like to put on the agenda for next week to split as we did last year.
I don't think we have any reason to change this plan.
I think so.
So you bring it next week according to what we've been doing.
Okay.
Practice your math.
Thanks, Mayor. And then lastly, as I kind of mentioned last week, we did go to 2-week briefing periods for the COVID-19. And so there's not a briefing for today, but there will be one going into next week. There's not any actions that I know that you as a commission need to take. We'd be open to any discussions on anything that anybody feels needs to be done. I will tell you that, depending on how the governor's plan goes, there may be a request to start opening up some of the buildings as of next week. So that's, I don't know if a decision necessarily needs to be made. I'm hoping that towards the end of this week we'll have some sort of information from the governor.
On a call on Friday afternoon for elected officials with the governor, she's hoping to make her analysis complete and report probably by Thursday, possibly Wednesday, but I would say Thursday, and if not Thursday, it'll probably be Friday afternoon on a 3:30 call, and so we'll know where that is. People get excited about the number of cases keeps going up. That is not the metric that is being used to evaluate whether we go to the next step or not. There are 2 metrics that are being used. Number 1 is hospitalizations per capita, and I think it's per 100,000 capita. We don't have 100,000 here, but we have 1 case still in the hospital, so we're not contributing much to that. The max we ever had was 4. The other metric that's being used is deaths, and we locally have not had any. So my hope is that all of the counties that don't have high hospitalization and death will be able to do something, but we'll wait. She talked about county by county decisions, and then she issued a statewide plan. So we'll just have to wait to see. But if everything goes according to plan, we will move the groups to 30, and you can have more than 1 group of 30 if you have a big enough facility. So this would allow churches to move to every other pew, family groupings in a pew, 6 feet or more between them, and they would be able to move forward. A lot of people, either in business or in religious institutions, do not want to get caught in a lawsuit if somebody gets the virus. So some are going to revert to waivers that everybody signs, which will be very cumbersome type of thing. But the other thing is that, 1, you have to prove that you got the virus there, which if you have lived in a cocoon, that may be easy to do, but primarily, and that what you did was intentionally, your intentional actions caused it. Those are the 2 keys, from my understanding, and listen to different attorneys argue this, and probably there's more if you listen to others. But the fact is that if you don't use PPT, and it's highly recommended that you do, that's sort of your intentional act, but it still may not be enough to do it. So I understand. That's why the library is not opening till June 15th. They want to be absolutely sure. Other people may do those kinds of things. Other people think this is a conspiracy theory and we're all going to just hug and dance and do everything and it won't matter. So We probably won't have many that will do that, but some have in the past, and usually there's coronavirus cases that have come out of those actions, both religious institutions and parties. So, you know, you probably saw over the weekend the news of the coronavirus party, and guess what? It really was. They got coronavirus cases out of that party. So we're gonna be safe as much as possible. We have industry here that makes seals for medical equipment. We cannot afford for that to be shut down. Those medical devices have to keep being shipped. We have pharmaceutical supplies, and we need to keep that up and going, and we do everything we can to cooperate with them to try to keep the community as clean as possible. That's thinking about others in both situations. The medical devices are needed, the medications are needed, and maybe even some of the research being done is needed for steps down the road. So we're doing what we can to keep this town as clean as possible, so as we keep on opening up, we'll still be safe and everybody will get there. So, but we're still in a point for this week, and even when you get to next week, if you're high risk, if you have heart condition, if you have diabetes, if you have some underlying immune system, you need to still be absolutely cautious, even if you think you're okay, and do what you can to keep yourself safe. And we'll all get through this, and hopefully there is not a big second wave as some predict. So we don't have to agree with everything, but we do what we can to stay healthy. So with that, I don't think we have anything more